So now we're getting to the open panel parts. So you guys can just go at it. I will make sure the debate doesn't devolve or get too sidetracked, but it's going to be just you guys. So kick it off, whoever wants to.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
Go ahead, Andrew.
No, you can go ahead.
So one of the things that gets really annoying, and I know we have to do this on YouTube because we're trying to get views or whatever, but it's the idea of like, what is a high status man? And then the definition is so incredibly vague. We spend half an hour trying to figure out what that term means. It's the same kind of situation here. Like when I hear people complaining about a patriarchy, what I'm hearing is I am a victim because there is a nefarious attempt by men specifically to keep other people down. And so when I hear that, that is not the same definition as what I saw with that dictionary definition that Alex just read, which is the idea that, yes, men have 17 times as much testosterone genetically, heritably than women do. And so because of that, they're going to have bigger, stronger joints and muscles. They're going to be more aggressive. They're going to be the ones protecting the tribe, building the buildings. They're going to be the ones protecting the tribe from predators. They're going to be the ones out there procuring the resources. And so because of that, we're going to have a patriarchy by default. If the idea is like, for instance, that Barbie movie where the patriarchy is this basically this mechanism by which to keep all women down in every single case, I don't agree with that, and therefore those are two different discussions we're having. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why I think it's important. So the definition I think we should work with is a system where the man is in charge of the family, social institutions, and ultimately the government, where men have control in that. Now, whether it's something that's like through force where women can't get in, I think that doesn't happen in reality right now. So there's no point even getting into that. But it's a system that's basically dominated by men. That's essentially the crux of it.
Yeah, I think the issue is that when we talk about like differences in testosterone and ability to defend people from like violence, these are like the least important things that exist in society today. Probably things like IQ or your ability to do well in school or work certain types of jobs are becoming increasingly more important. And these are arenas where women are at parity or slightly better or slightly worse than we're talking about with men in a lot of different circumstances. So the idea of building all of our society and our hierarchies around who can kill who with their bare fists probably isn't very relevant or effective in organizing society today.
Yeah, but Destiny, you would agree that we have to have an enforcement arm which enforces the laws of the nation, and that men are going to be the default for that enforcement arm, basically at all times.
Well, it depends. No, that's not even remotely true. No,
it is true.
It's not.
Okay, but demonstrate how it's not.
Can a judge be a woman?
Yeah, judges aren't the enforcement arm. The enforcement arm are the people who are going to be out there enforcing the law.
Okay, so judges are absolutely part of our enforcement. It's part of our criminal justice system. But you're saying that just the cops themselves might have to be men?
Let's back up.
Okay.
What does a judge enforce? So a judge will lay down, their judgment, but they're not enforcing the judgment themselves. Other people are doing that enforcement for them, right?
Okay, so if you're saying that at the end of the day, the people that apply physical violence might have to be men, if at the very end of that chain, then we can say that, but I still wouldn't organize an entire society around that.
Yeah, but it's going to be a necessity that society is organized around that. Because
why would it be? Why would we organize all of our society around one of the least important parts of our society?
That is about the most important part is the enforcement and defense of your society. I can't think of a more important part of society than the enforcement of its laws and the defense of its people. Can you?
I think that is a bare minimum threat. That's like saying the most important part of society is like access to food or water. I mean, while it's technically true, that's not what's separating out like the great societies from the middling ones. Well, I think that enforcing crime is not a very complex problem. Now, solving the conditions for crime is complex, but just the enforcement mechanisms for, I guess, arresting people or holding people in prison is not the most pressing or important part of a country today.
Wait a second. The things which give nations the greatest amount of stability, especially as if they're a nation of laws and a nation of law and order, I would say that that's a pivotal, fundamental foundation for your nation to thrive. Like Somalia is not doing so hot, right? Places without law and order aren't doing so hot.
Okay, so let's think of like...
Let me finish, and then I'll kick it back over. Same thing with the military. One of the reasons we're one of the most powerful nations on planet Earth and have such security is because we have such a massive national defense system. And yes, I think enforcement is pivotal to all societies everywhere at all times, regardless of their technology level or not.
If you're comparing like what country is more successful, Germany, France, the UK, Norway, Sweden, the United States, Canada, at any point in this conversation, is the enforcement mechanism for cracking people on the street ever entering the conversation?
Well, it's assumed. So these are baseline assumptions. So just because we assume that this is already kind of baked into the pie, so therefore we're not talking about it, doesn't mean that it's not one of the most important fundamentals to that society.
That's what I mean. It's important, but it's fundamental and largely solved. That's not going to be, just like I said, for food and water. No one's going to say France is better than Germany because less people are starving to death. That's an assumed thing. That, like, things like distribution of food and water in most first world countries and a lot of third world countries has largely been figured out. So these aren't the things that we ought to be focusing on these days.
But I think that they are, because when those enforcement mechanisms begin to break down, like we saw with the BLM riots and things like this, society itself begins to shake apart at its core. So I do think that it is important that we do start to look at these things as these systems begin to break down. I mean, you were kind of on the forefront, for instance, with, I don't even know if I can say the name on YouTube, right? But with the whole thing that happened with the 3 guys and the dude with the AR, right? You were on the forefront of that. You
say Rittenhouse on YouTube?
I don't know if you can or you can't. I don't know what you can say on YouTube anymore.
You can say whatever you want on
Okay. So anyway, on the Rittenhouse thing, you were kind of at the forefront of that. You understand that in a nation of laws, when you have a breakdown of law and therefore enforcement, that defaults back to something that's more primitive, which then becomes males who are enforcing whatever their own law is. I mean, so I think that this is something that is pivotal, and it is happening in society, and that's another helpful case for why the patriarchy is good.
I think Sartain wanted to say something, so let's just make sure he gets a chance to say it.
So there are multiple facets, right? So if you take like a hierarchy of needs, if society is running properly, you don't need as much law enforcement. Like I had a buddy of mine say, laws are only, as Bradley, he was saying, laws are for people. If you have a society full of nothing but good men, you don't need laws. But the problem is, like, for instance, if I live and I have a nice day and all the thing I'm worried about is like buying a gift for my wife or taking my dog out to the park, and then all of a sudden somebody starts choking me, the most important thing in the world becomes air, right? Now all of a sudden my priorities change to survival. I think Andrew's correct. If we get to a point where things break down, it's like, are the men who conduct the violence the most important parts of society? When you're Ukraine and Russia invades, then they become the most important part of society. During other parts of time, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But my point is, I just so we can, play devil's advocate here, Destiny, let's just say that you're right, that it's the least important part of society. The testosterone argument was that men are going to be more assertive, and therefore, because they're going to be more assertive, they're going to have roles in, like, say, politics, as executives at different companies. They're just going to have those roles more. Like, I was in the U.S. military, and we tried to get as many female pilots in the U.S. military as possible. It was definitely an organized effort to do so, and there were still 8 or 9 times as many men as women pilot applicants, because men in those fields just had the proclivity to want to do those things. So that was my argument before, instead of saying, well, men are only there to just conduct violence. Men are also just more assertive and want jobs that deal with, like, problem solving as far as construction. Unless you think that that's not the case, that like maybe women would take those jobs if things were more egalitarian. I think men are more interested in being politicians. They're more interested in being firefighters. They're more interested in being construction workers. They're more interested in being in the infantry than women are.
I think in the most egalitarian society where everything has been 100% socially equalized, I think you'd probably still see a pretty big difference between the types of jobs that men and women choose.
Sure.
I wouldn't deny that. I don't know if I would consider that patriarchy at that point. But I mean, yeah,
which goes back to my original argument. I don't think that's patriarchy. I think men being more assertive is just a function that leads to a society that we're in now. And it's not good or bad. It's just the way that it is, because we had 2 genders in the species, and one of the genders had to compete and had to protect the other gender. And therefore, that's why we're bigger and stronger. And that's why we tend to be more assertive in our different roles in society.
Yeah, and that could potentially be true. But I think the difference is that, like, do we have a society, like Michael says, where men just gravitate towards different jobs as women do? Yeah. Or do we have a society that Andrew wants where it's like women aren't allowed to go to school or something? Like, I think that's the difference.
Wait. When did I say that?
Aren't you opposed? I thought we had a debate once. Aren't you opposed to women having a college education?
No.
Okay, I'm mixing up with someone else then. Okay.
No, not only,
people,
hang on.
I think that was Nick.
And kind of the other thing to push back on that, so that women have always traditionally done, since they've been allowed to go into education, they've always outperformed men. Always. They've always outperformed men from the educational standpoint. This has always been the case. At the college level and even pre-college level, they've always outperformed men. The reason for this is because it's more conducive for women. That type of setting's more conducive. There's far less rough play. There's far less, of this type of thing. But they pretty much always outperform men. So that's I'm kind of giving you that. But also, just so that you understand, and I kind of take issue with what Michael's saying here. What I'm talking about is a foundational level. So I'm saying there's an equalization of force which does not exist. So egalitarianism in itself, I think, is false anyway, because there is no such thing as an equalization of force between men and women. I think that necessarily you're always going to have patriarchy in one form or another, regardless of how much you try to push towards egalitarianism, because it's impossible not to, because of that equalization of force differential. And that equalization of force differential is so wide that a small core of men can basically overrule a large body of women, but the opposite can never be true.
Basically, I want to also let Angela and Malik get their words in, because they haven't literally said anything the whole debate. So, let's just go with you, Angela.
My biggest issue with what Andrew is saying, that we can't be in an egalitarian society. I think I guess, like, if you want to go off of like what you only know, saying that, men have always worked hard, they've been the laborers of America. But I think that if you look at the stats now, that men are no longer working and going to school. So I'm really curious as to how it can't be an egalitarian society if they're not putting in the work that they used to.
Well, because
what are they doing?
Because it necessarily can't actually be equal, because there's no equalization of force. Women will always have to depend on men to enforce their rights, and they'll always have to depend on men to enforce their well-being. They'll always have to depend on men to make the enforcement for all of the things that they want and desire for themselves. They can't enforce those things on their own. They need men to enforce them for them. And men do not need women to enforce their own rights. They do not need women to enforce their own agendas. They don't need women for any of that. But women necessarily need men to do that for them.
Could I say it like this, maybe, Andrew? At the core fundamental, the basis of society, you need men willing to do violence in order to protect the rights of other people.
Well, but it's not just that, though. So I want to be very clear with this. It's not just that you need to have aggressive men who are willing to conduct violence in order to keep a society together. It's that fundamentally women must depend on men to enforce their rights, period.
Got it.
Period.
Got it.
They have to. So egalitarianism, I think, even as a proposition, is false. I don't even think it's possible. I think from a foundational level, it's always going to be patriarchal due to this gap. And philosophers have talked about this for, basically 1,000 years. So have biblical theologians. And it's one of the huge gaps when you're talking about egalitarianism. How, for instance, Angela, how do you enforce your own personal rights absent men? Absent men collectively assisting you in doing that. How would you do that?
Well, I guess, like, in what state are we living in that we constantly need men?
Anywhere you want. Any imaginary place that you even can think of.
I'm living in America with this great citizenship that I have. I don't have to constantly live in fear that someone needs to enforce my rights. I'm living happily fine. So I'm just curious. So we continuously go back to that, and we say that men need to be there to protect us from what? Other men?
Yes.
Like, so is the issue is like other men beating on other men? So this goes back to like a men's issue.
Yes. So men give women rights and men give other men rights. That's correct.
Okay.
So because they're the enforcement arm, they are going to be the people who deliver rights to women or take rights away from women, or deliver rights to men or take rights away from men. So men are always going to be the dominants in force, and so therefore they're always going to be the decider of who gets the rights. Can you think of an alternative system?
In this current, I'm sorry. So why are men failing in this current society?
They're not failing.
They're so failing.
How are they failing?
Yeah, but you just said you were safe, Angela, so I don't know that they're failing, right? I don't know if that's...
It's just right now, we like the way that society works. We have a whole it's men don't do anything. It's the massive institutions that we've created around our countries that ensure rights. You don't get rights from men. You get rights from the protections that the institutions of government have guaranteed you, right? There are men in all sorts of different countries, but the rights that women have afforded to them dramatically vary from country to country, regardless of what man is going to protect them. You might have the strongest male defender ever in Afghanistan, but it doesn't mean you're going to college if you're a woman there. And also, just when you compare country to country and you're looking for like what are the most successful countries, it's not the ones with the most alpha men or the most manly men protecting the rights. It's generally you're looking for things like, do women have access to birth control, and are they participating in the economy? So I don't know. It's just like, it's a very crude argument.
Well, there's a bunch of things that are kind of smuggled in there, right? So the first thing is kind of smuggled in is you talk about institutions being the protectors of rights. Institutions are just a coalition of people, individuals. They're going to rely on the enforcement arm also of men. You say it's not masculine men who are defending these rights. However, it is masculine men who are in the military, in law enforcement, things like this, who are the enforcement arm of these rights, who these government institutions rely heavily on in order to enforce what their will is. So it always does come down to enforcement.
Do you think then that the countries where women have the most rights are the countries with the most masculine, strong men?
So they're not mutually exclusive or non-exclusive.
I didn't say they're mutually exclusive. I'm asking because you make it sound like it's just strong men that grant rights. So does that mean that if I were to look at all the women's rights in the world,
there's a problem there? There's a smug win again where you say strong masculine men are the only ones doing them. I'm just saying men as the default are the ones who are doing this.
Wait, but why you say men are the default? Like we can run that back a little bit more reductively. Shouldn't it be 6 feet or taller men? Like don't all men that are 5'8" and lower get their rights from men that are 6 feet and taller?
No.
Why not?
Because they don't have a non-equalization on force. A 5'8" person can defend themselves against a 6-foot person.
In general, do you think that's true?
I think that there are some advantages, but if you're going to do that, then on average,
no, not some advantages. I'm saying on average, if we look at combat sports with no weight classes, you think 5'8" men are defending?
Well, hang on. So if we're going to use averages, then let's use averages and say that we have an average for a reason because most men are inside of that average, right? So if that's true, then most of the men who would be falling in these jobs are going to be within that average, Destiny. So
sure, but I'm just asking if we run this all the way back. So any man that's below the average height, any man that's 5'9" or lower, their rights are also being defended by men that are 6'2" and taller.
Well, no, that wouldn't be a direct correlate for equalization because men who are 6 foot, because men who are 6 foot, there's far fewer of them than men who are in the average aggregate. So therefore, the force equalization is different. However, if you're looking at the force differential from men to women, the average is so lopsided that even weak men can generally defend themselves fairly well against strong women.
If you want to do force equalization there, then shouldn't we be looking at people that prefer a heavily patriarchal society versus people that prefer a more egalitarian one? And the force equalization for women on the egalitarian one would be probably that most men would side with that over the ones that want the heavily patriarchal one?
Yeah, but that would go with my point, which is that men are the ones who are the rights givers.
But men aren't just the rights givers there, because a coalition of 5'9" and shorter men with women are probably going to defend rights more than a coalition of 6 foot plus alpha men.
But the distinction there is that you said it yourself, it would be a coalition of men and women, but it'll never be women. So it'll always have to be men. And it'll never be
5'8" and lower men, I don't think,
no,
right?
It will always be. The default will always go to men. Men can always enforce their rights collectively.
Okay, so you just want to arbitrarily cut it off at just men, but not go into any of the delineations.
I just went into every delineation with you. Which one would you like to go into?
I mean, I already said it. I think that you could argue that like taller men are the ones that run society, and shorter men only exist in society essentially at the behest of larger men, basically.
Yeah, but we just covered this. That's true. You could say that, but if you're looking at an average, then you're saying that the men who are outside of the average are fewer in number than the men who are in the average. So they're outnumbered. So I don't know what your point is.
I mean, it could be the slightly taller men could probably take on 1.5 shorter men. I'm sure we could find some average where 30% of men in society can run the other 70%.
And it's still men.
Like nobody looks at...
And it's still men.
Sure.
That's the point.
It is men, but now I'm going into height. But you want to go back on just the man, the fact that it's like the man thing. But again, and to go very broad, because now, I mean, I feel like we kind of see how ridiculous the argument is, and just like saying, just men.
I haven't heard you refute it.
Broadly speaking, right, it's hard to refute because it's almost unfalsifiable because you're talking about half the population of the planet, right? Like, how am I supposed to refute that men are important in guarding rights? There are no countries that exist without men. But when I try to think of like, well, what's the refutation of this? Here would be an interesting thing. Do the countries with the strongest men have the most rights? Not really, no. In fact, just the opposite. I remember hearing so many jokes about how because Russia is so masculine and manly that all the trans Ukrainian soldiers were going to be getting murdered by the brave Russian soldiers. And here we've got drone operators, tossing grenades on Russian troops blowing themselves, right? So it doesn't seem to be the case that like just strong men are a good predictor of rights.
So hang on, wait a second.
Go for it.
So men can take your rights away in those other countries too?
No, not just men. Those countries can take your rights away. You need a whole
institution.
Using
the enforcement arm of who? Which sex do you think is the enforcement arm?
Countries are powered by men and women. When the Soviet Union beat
is the enforcement
Nazi
arm?
Germany, when the Soviet, it's not just about the enforcement arm. Who's giving them the arms to enforce?
Usually other men.
Who manufactures the guns? Who manufactures?
Do you think that there's female gun makers all over the world or what?
Yeah,
bro?
who do you think was working production in World War II when all of our men were going overseas?
They weren't designing the guns. They were literally on an assembly line putting a fucking screw in a fucking piece of metal. They weren't designing weapons. What world do you live in?
That's great. And at the end of the day, both jobs matter. You could be the best engineer in the world. If you don't have somebody building your shit, it doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah, that's nice. Women can be a labor force if men allow them to. That's fantastic.
Sure. And what I'm saying, you can say if men allow them to, however you want to say it or whatever, but the reality is at the end of the day, it's not just men, right? You need both halves of society working together to actually fucking accomplish anything. So there is no society or country that's like...
You're smuggling in just men again. You're smuggling in just men. What I'm saying to you specifically is that men are the enforcement arm, and nobody's building shit if men say no. That's what I'm saying. Women aren't going to be able to go to men and say, no, you know what? We're going to do it anyway if men don't want them to, Destiny. That's the distinction.
Well, I disagree with what you're saying because I understand what you're saying. It sounds great on paper, but if we, again, look at the stats right now, the suicide rates are up. Men are dying. Men aren't going to school. They've dropped out of school during COVID.
Yeah, but hold on, Angela. The point of the patriarchy wasn't to just do the point of the what do you say in the patriarchy? It wasn't that all men do better. Because I've heard this argument before. Yes, men are going to commit suicide more because there's men at the bottom of society that are not benefiting from this patriarchy. Right? Does that make sense? So I've heard the argument before of like the idea that men are suffering isn't really the reason why the patriarchy isn't working. It's like the point he's trying to make is Andrew's guys, tell me if I'm wrong here. Andrew's trying to say that the foundation of society, there are men who have to enforce and to take certain jobs that have to do with military, law enforcement, etc. And what Destiny is saying is that while that is a part of society and probably a more important part of society in the past, today it's a less important society because we have technology, because we have, someone who's a computer programmer, doesn't matter if they're a man or a woman, people can be successful entrepreneurs and be men or women. And I totally understand both parts of those. But my issue, the initial thing that I was saying before was that because men generally are more aggressive, they're going to fill more parts of that society, being entrepreneurs, being CEOs of companies, being in the U.S. military, being bodyguards, and stuff like that. So,
I think that.
Go ahead, Angela. Sorry.
No, sorry.
Yeah. So I mean, I hear everything you guys are saying, but this all sounds like it's just like labor force jobs. But meanwhile, like the society is thriving off of multiple things that doesn't require you to just be like a fucking barbarian. So I don't understand why we continue to go back to the state of mind.
Because both things are important. Because both things
are important, but it's completely just highlighted in the fact that it's only men. But if you really look at it, women are thriving in it. Women are working more. 7.2 million men aren't working. So what are those men doing that they're contributing to the patriarchy that's so important that men can't enforce those guys who aren't working, who aren't doing shit? So I'm confused.
Wait a second. Women are only able to work in modernity the way that they are because men maintain the entirety of the infrastructure inside of every single nation on the planet. Women do not maintain infrastructure. Their top jobs are teaching, serving, things like this. They don't work in infrastructure. They don't work in paving the roads. They don't work with the air conditioners. They don't work with the electricity. They don't work with any of these things. At a very low scale, do they work in any of these industries? The scales are so lopsided that you almost can just take the women out because they're so irrelevant to most of these industries. So the thing is I got to ask you, like you say women are doing all these great things. It's like they're all enabled by the patriarchal system, which literally has men competing with men, which we're supposed to be doing, and we love to do that, for status, for all of these different things. But the entirety of the world that you live in currently, that women are thriving in, all of it is maintained by men, and very little of it is maintained by women.
Do you think that in a society without men, women couldn't do these things? Like you're picking the most, not to sound mean, but like you're picking like the bottom. These are the bottom men of society. These are not to be mean, but these are the bottom of the
electricians are the bottom of society. That's interesting.
Shout out to the U.S. Army.
I'm sorry. Electricians are building the roads.
I said the infrastructure, and yes, they are building the infrastructure.
Electricians are building the most, and also yes, electricians or trade jobs would go underneath college jobs. If you want to compare them to other
why would they go underneath?
Let's let Malik get a word.
Why would they go underneath?
Hold on. Well, they're underneath because they require less training and they pay less.
They don't require less training.
They, by definition, do require less training.
Then show me the definition where college degree means less training than a trade degree.
Because typically trades are something that you can train into in a shorter period of time than a more specialized college degree level job.
In fact, to go from a journeyman to a master takes many, many, many years of training, Destiny.
You're comparing a master. We're not talking about a 4-year degree grad holder as being a master. Who do you think makes more money, a master software engineer or a master electrician or carpenter?
Well, it depends on what the electrician is doing. If they're a master electrician, for instance, and they're working inside of a nuclear silo, I think that they're probably making a lot of fucking money.
Okay, if they're a master software engineer, their name is Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, he's going to make a lot of money, but that's an exception to the. Now Zuckerberg, does he have a college degree? Didn't he drop out of college?
You're saying on exception, you think people in the trades make more money than people with college degrees?
If they're men, yeah, often they do. Yes, that's correct.
Often they do. I'm asking on average.
Catching up. It's definitely catching up because what's happened is the labor force is not really there's a lot of men out there that are not working. And we had Waller on our show, Justin Waller, and he talks about like when he has union people that come on to work on some of his building sites, his construction sites, those guys, he would take those over a master's degree 100 times out of 100. Now, is that an exception? Is that everywhere?
Wait, over a master's degree for doing construction work?
Let's let Malik just get one word in. She hasn't spoken.
Yeah, Malik, go ahead. Go ahead, Malik. Sorry.
So in regards to like women being in the workforce, I think Angela was the one who brought that up. Women literally would not be able to get to work, would not be able to work, would not be able to do anything if men didn't exist. Men built the roads that they drive on. Men built the cars that they drive. Men built the buildings that they work in. Most of the time, their boss or their CEO is a man, because men just do things better. And that's not even being sexist. That's just facts. Like if men didn't exist, women literally wouldn't even be able to work. So to even bring up the point like, oh, a lot of the workforce is women, that's irrelevant because every woman working could be replaced by a man. And yes, you could say the other around, but you're not going to see women paving the roads. You're not going to see women being civil engineers. You're not going to see women like doing it. I mean, they could, but they don't. They choose jobs that don't require degrees. They choose jobs that they can just be nurturers and supporters.
Aren't women going to school more than men now? What do you mean they choose jobs that don't require degrees?
The average woman.
But look at the industries they're in.
Okay, I guess nursing requires a degree, right? There's a lot of female nurses.
Mm-hmm. It's not a 4-year degree sometimes, but yeah.
More women are entering med school now than men. It's totally changing.
Customer support, work as secretaries, work as servers.
Yep.
Versus men who are civil engineers, who are architects. Architecture doesn't require degrees, as a certificate, but women wouldn't be able to function without men. And I don't know how
men can't function without women. What are these weird arguments that women get? Like, what world do you guys live in?
It's like both things. I don't know.
Well, when you say that, though,
it's not a competition between the two sexes. Like I think when we speak
about it's not a competition, but I think
but you make it sound like it because you continuously belittle women,
it's
and
an
then
invalid point.
And we're just like subjective to men in everything we do. And I'm just saying, why do we have to frame it in that way? And as if that's the only this Indian
because
giving
it's
idea
true. Because it's true. It is true.
Like historically, men have given you these things. Sure. But we're speaking in this time, and I'm saying that I don't believe that it's quite necessary. I don't understand how men are falling behind in society, yet still saying that we own the world.
Tell me the metrics that
men are falling behind in society because of this feminist.
Because other men are beating other men down, telling them they aren't shit.
For men to embrace their femininity.
Because if you're not 6 feet tall, if you don't make 6 figures, you're not shit. If you won't get a girl to submit to you, it doesn't make any sense.
That's the dumb red pill theory.
No. Because
these
you're
incel below average men idolizing above average men that they'll never be. That's the non-existent
we'll let these
internet
broads fight for a second.
You're going on the
speaking points.
This is what women need to do. To just stay in the kitchen and just stay at home. So
I never said women should stay in the kitchen. I think women do pretty well in the
kitchen.
Get
those super chats in. But I didn't
say they should stay there. I think women should work. I think there's nothing wrong with that. But the fact that an equal society is even possible, I just think that's crazy. You can never have a society where both gender roles are not important in their own individual way.
Yeah, but that's different from what you said in the beginning. You're saying that women don't basically contribute to society. Basically, we can just stay at home. Is basically referring it to.
No, I said that women would not even be able to be in the workforce if it wasn't for all the work men have done.
Yeah, but men wouldn't have kids if it wasn't for women. Men wouldn't have meals if women didn't cook it. There's so many things that were complementary, but again, it's a the way that you're from everything is a competition.
Men wouldn't have meals if women didn't cook them?
Isn't that why men want wives? Like, you guys would just be eating shit food all the time. I don't get it.
Men can't cook themselves healthy food?
Women can't build roads?
No, they can't. They're not even physically built to do it.
They're not physical. What do you think those jobs aren't you actually picking the road up and putting it down? Most of the shit, you have tools and stuff that you use.
Yeah, I know. Have you ever done one of those jobs?
I did. I was a fucking carpenter. We did drywall installation. We did water damage.
Then let me notate some differences for you. We have different skeletal structures. Women can't deal with the heat. Can we just
skip this? Yeah.
Women can't deal with the heat as well. They physiologically cannot do a lot of these jobs on average, Destiny.
The average construction job doesn't have to be outside in Phoenix in 120-degree weather.
It does if you're building a fucking road, Destiny.
Men take breaks when it's really hot outside. You know that, right?
Yeah. And they're going to have to work in those conditions, right?
Again, the constant back and forth, like I'm trying to understand this, and maybe I don't get this, but if you guys were building roads and infrastructure and there weren't women, would you still be doing this shit? Would you just be living in huts and sleeping on futons? Again, it goes back to we do need each other. You guys do this shit for women. Women do shit for men. So again, it's egalitarian. I don't give a fuck what anyone says. That doesn't make sense.
Okay, but is egalitarian or is not egalitarian? In a patriarchy, there's both men and women. The man's role is to be a leader, a guide, or whatever. And the woman's role is to nurture and support the man in a functioning patriarchy, correct?
Sure, but what is a man leading this day and age? I don't understand. If we're
in an egalitarian society, they're exactly equal. There's no roles. Yeah. Women do the same shit men do.
Yes.
So if women do the same exact shit men do,
Destiny's trying to formulate an argument.
You have all these labor-intensive, and I've been saying this as someone who worked in construction for 4 years. And as someone who's been in the blue-collar and white-collar fields, men just do it better. Men are faster at doing shit like that. They are physically built for that, versus women do so much better in a nurturing or supporting role in society. So
what did you do for construction for 4 years?
Yes, women theoretically could.
Wait, I'm curious what your job was for what? Because no offense to anybody that works these jobs, most people I knew were lazy as fuck. Okay, blue collar guys, or at least in the industries I worked in, are not running around like working super fucking hard. Blah blah. You're generally doing as little as you can to cash out as much as you can before the fucking somebody catches you jerking off or messing around or whatever. Like, it's not like these people are out here like fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger, like building entire fucking houses on their back. Like, what are we talking about right now?
Yeah, well, yeah, they are. And they are working hard. They're working long hours.
Yeah.
They're working 60, 70 hours a week. They are hauling extraordinarily heavy things. Their work requirements for even basic factory work is very strenuous on the body. What the fuck are you talking about?
Again, I think that
I was curious what Malik's job was. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I used to work with servos.
In the construction industry.
You think that installing
I'm going to use my experience in the construction industry, for example.
Are you saying,
ahead,
Destiny, that are you saying that working on robotics and working on machines is not hard, difficult, strenuous work? Because it is.
I've never seen an industry where everybody is hardcore busting their ass like constantly on the shit they're doing. I'm pretty sure even the meme is that like if you drive around and you see people working on roads and shit, 95% of the drive you drive by, they're literally just fucking standing there. Now I know that's not happening all the time, okay?
Right.
But I'm pretty sure blue collar, white collar, most people are just trying to do the least amount of work they can to get by.
Well,
like,
let me concede the case with most people. A few points that I would agree that in basically anywhere you go, that there's a core group of people who tend to do more work than anybody else does, okay? So I'll agree that that's true, but I don't think that that takes away from the fact that, yes, these jobs are difficult, they are strenuous on the body, they do require a lot of work, and people are working extremely long hours, and yeah, I do think that they're busting their ass, and I do think that from a physical standpoint, that women are not going to be doing logging, and they're not going to be doing line work for power lines, and they physically, I don't think most of them are even capable of doing that. Can you meet me halfway here?
No, I think they can do the job.
Okay, then why don't they?
On average, because the jobs suck. And chances are, if you're part of a lower class family,
just dumb?
The ones that do those jobs, Andrew, yes, they are.
No, they're not.
Yes, that's the whole point. Okay,
why do you think they're dumb? Why do you think that these people are dumb?
Because
the linemen are dumb.
I know this is hard and offensive or whatever, or triggers you or whatever to hear it, but right now, society is oriented around high IQ workers tend to earn more money. If you were to take the collective IQ of people working in trades and compare them to people working white-collar jobs, the people working the white-collar jobs are smarter. Smarter men don't roof. Smarter men aren't doing power lines. Smarter men aren't doing construction. They're in fucking air-conditioned offices earning 2, 3, 4 times as much and take their family to Disney World twice a year.
You're talking about an amount of jobs which is minuscule and not even available to most human beings, let alone men.
What do you mean? There's been a greater demand right now for middle class, for college educated workers in the United States than there probably ever has been in all of human history.
So backing up, that really doesn't negate what I'm saying, which is that there's still only a minuscule amount of these positions where you're earning $300,000+ a year for any human being on Earth.
No one is talking about 300,000, earning 70,000.
Well, earning $100,000 a year in a trade is not hard, Destiny.
You're wrong.
Yeah, I'm not wrong.
You don't earn on average 100,000 a year in a trade. That's just not true.
If you take an average for a journeyman, I bet you it's around 50, 60 grand. And I guarantee you that anecdotally, at least, most tradesmen you talk to, because the hours they work, probably earning around 80 to 100K. Yeah.
Okay, if you want to go and work 2 jobs, you can do that as a white collar as well. I'm not going to compare people working 80 hours a week.
Well, this is part of the confines of the job requirement, though. You can't leave a line that's running because the fucking clock whistled. You might be able to do that in the white-collar world, but part of the job for maintaining these systems is keeping them up 24 hours a day. It's part of the requirement for it.
I just want to hear then I just want to hear your commitment. So you think that trade workers, on average, will out-earn degree workers? We'll say STEM degree, obviously not like an arts major or something.
You're just making shit up.
Wait. Okay, so you don't think they out-earn them? Do you think people that work in the trades will out-earn people on average that work in that get STEM degrees?
You're literally straw-manning my argument. Repeat my argument. So I'll tell you what. Repeat my argument back. Repeat it back. I want to be good faith with you. Just repeat the argument back.
Can we try something here real quick, Destiny? So I think what the argument is that college degree means less the more people that get college degrees, and so those men who get college degrees, not all of them are getting bachelor degree level work. I know I didn't. I got a college degree from UT Austin. I ended up managing a fucking strip club, or I was a DJ at a strip club afterwards. There were no jobs after 9/11s. So not necessarily what's happened is those people who work in trades, it's caught up because a lot of people who get college degrees aren't getting those jobs. Now, you're correct. If we're just talking about people who get master's degree levels jobs, then for sure they're making more money than trades. But what Andrew's saying is not everyone has those jobs. It is not right.
There's an availability. There's a limited availability.
Only 26% of the population makes more than $100,000 a year.
Yeah. So we're not talking about just. I'm just saying that on average, a STEM degree person is going to earn more than on average a person working in the trade.
For sure.
Yeah, but can you tie that into what that has to do with what we're talking about?
Because you said women don't want to work those jobs.
Right. They can. Well, I also said they can't physically do some of those jobs.
That's fine. That's fine. You said women don't want to, and I said that's true, but neither do men. In a lower class family that are working those jobs, where the IQs run lower, where the college education runs lower, somebody's going to be working those jobs. It's probably going to be the men, and the women are probably going to either be working a fucking service job or they're going to be staying at home taking care of the family.
Which of these jobs do you think are low IQ jobs?
Trades on average are probably going to skew lower IQ in terms of being capable than STEM related jobs.
Can you demonstrate that? I'm actually curious now.
Bro,
I don't
know. No, you're so fucking retarded and bad faith. You're going to sit here and pretend otherwise. Like that is like.
I'm actually curious now. Now I'm curious.
That's almost self-evidently going to be.
Why would that be self-evidently true?
Come on. I think, Andrew, if he's just talking about STEM, because remember before the discussion was college education. College education all across. I know some really stupid people that have bachelor's degrees. I don't necessarily think that's the case. But if Destiny is just specifically talking about science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, they probably do have on average.
Yeah, but there's overlap when you're talking about some of those jobs with what you would consider to be these infrastructure jobs. That's the problem that I have.
Correct.
So I want to know. So what I want to know is like, if you're saying that somebody who gets a STEM degree, right, in nursing, for instance, right? Do you consider that STEM? I don't know. Do you consider that STEM?
Science, technology, probably, I guess.
I guess I would too. I don't think that nurses have a higher IQ than electricians do. I don't believe that shit.
They probably do.
Well, then let's find out. Like, I'm willing to be wrong, but I don't think they do.
Well, I would definitely just to say that maybe,
I don't think so.
I would say maybe they do, because I think that it's all about how you make your money. And I think that if you're just going to use your back labor to work, I mean, how long could you really go before you feel like I'm making all this money and I'm depressed and life sucks, as opposed to someone who learns how to make their money a lot smarter because they have a higher IQ. So I don't think that you're actually arguing that in good faith when you say that you don't believe that. I mean, as somebody who has a background of working in the fucking nail industry, we make a lot of money. It's quite fucking miserable. My whole family makes a lot of money, but they're miserable. Me diving into a new space where I have to explore other parts of my brain other than just physical labor, I think that's different for me, but it's the way that we make money, it's just different. I think that it's
just briefly, just so I just
Sure.
and then I'll give you the floor back, right?
Sure.
But you said that you think I'm arguing what in bad faith?
Because it seems like you're not trying to understand what he's trying to say. Because I believe that
I do
that's
understand.
Why...
Do you want me to repeat it back?
Sure, repeat
that
it.
way you know that it's not in bad faith. So my argument, this has gone from a foundation for why it is that men are necessary in a patriarchy, necessary for enforcement, and the conversation graduated from there into what types of jobs men and women can even do, what they're even capable of doing. From there,
you want to share that?
From there, at this point, we're moving into, if you're talking about trades and you're talking about people in STEM fields, Destiny says that the people who are in trades have a lower IQ than people in STEM fields on average. Okay, I think that that might be true, but I also think that there might be overlap between these things when you're talking about the maintenance of society in some of these STEM fields. I don't see how what I said was bad faith at all.
Well, I think the biggest issue is like not understanding or being, I don't know, having enough common sense or to realize I think too much of anything is bad. I think if we're leaning too much and saying that somebody in STEMs is high IQ and they can just accomplish everything in life and they're happy making money and they're thriving in society.
Also, just a real, as an ultra real quick, just because I'm Googling and a lot of people are typing in the chat, it seems like electricians are some of the highest IQ tradesmen and their IQ is around 110 and it looks like nurses are like 116 to 120. So
Alex,
even electricians, which are the highest
IQ
of the tradesmen, it seems like nurses are higher.
Yeah.
There you go. There's a chart right there. So that's an IQ distribution by occupation right there. Yeah, definitely. By the way, some of the wealthiest people I know, most successful, work in sales, and some of them are not very high IQ. So we don't need to necessarily put like how much money you make directly in correlation with IQ. But yes,
wait. No. We should though. That's not fair to say, right? That's like saying, I think Andrew brought it up earlier. Zuckerberg dropped out of college. The average college dropout is not earning $50 billion a year.
Sure.
IQ and income in the United States and across all of the Western world
generally correlate.
No, not generally. They're highly correlated.
Yeah, but you brought up Zuckerberg. You brought up Zuckerberg as an example of somebody who was highly educated making money.
That's not because he is highly educated. He just didn't do it the conventional way.
Right.
Most college dropouts are not as smart as Mark Zuckerberg.
Right.
Just because you failed college,
you brought up the exemption
doesn't mean
of the
that you're
rule.
highly educated. I'm sorry. Sure, that's fine. I'm just saying that in general, people that are working on the engineering or STEM side of things, even if we look at electricians, who do you think earns more money on average, an electrician or somebody that gets a degree in electrical engineering? Even you are somebody who gets a degree. Have a degree?
No, I don't have a degree.
You didn't get a degree in mechanical engineering?
No, just by trade. I just went and apprenticed. Yep.
I don't know why we're so focused on IQ because I think that's irrelevant.
I guess maybe I have the equivalency.
If someone's good,
I don't know.
But hold on, if someone's good at a blue collar job, if they're a professional at what they do, I don't think it fucking matters if they're bad at what someone else does. Like, if an engineer is insanely smart at engineering, that's great. They don't need to be knowledgeable on nursing or knowledgeable on construction or knowledgeable on AC or HVAC or shit like that. I think that argument's like completely. If you're good at what you do, that's all that fucking matters at the end of the day. Like, if
I think that's a really good point. I think that's absolutely
true.
Master
that, then you stick to that.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think generally, most women are better at doing certain things, and most men are better at doing certain things. So why are women trying to do things that they're genetically not better at, and why are men trying to do women's roles that they're genetic? Yes, they can. Both can do either. But it's like, if you suck at something and you're good at something else, like, why do you choose to go out of your way and work harder?
I think that's the entire point. That's
in an industry that wasn't meant for you.
The entire point is that people should probably just be able to do and sort themselves into the jobs that they work best at. Not that all women should do this or all men should do Y.
Yeah, 100%.
Oh, okay. Well, then we don't have an argument then, so.
I felt like we kind of searching.
Sorry, I just ended the debate. We all agree now.
There we go. We all agree.
I don't think you guys all agree, but if you guys are done with this segment, we'll move on to the next one, unless anyone has anything they want to add.
I think we got off the topic of patriarchy and started doing which I think would be a great discussion to have a correlation of IQ and earning potential. I think or success in general. I think that would be a cool discussion at some other point.
Let's redirect back to the patriarchy and see if there's any disagreements left on that still.
Yeah, so I still think we got caught up into the weeds. I would still like Angela Knight or Destiny or either on your side to give a refutation of the equalization of power between men and women and how you think we're ever going to move past a patriarchy, knowing that there's never going to be an equalization of force. I literally don't understand that. I've thought about it for years.
It's like arguing in society, like which phenotype would be more suited to hunter gathering. It's just not really that relevant in terms of the most successful societies in the world right now.
How is it not relevant? It seems to be like it's the core placement that you're never going to be able to get away from.
Food and water are core placements, but they're not the big differentiator between the has and the has-nots right now, globally speaking.
Okay, so I think that's fair to say, but if I make the descriptive statement, it is true that we need water. It is true that we need food. It is true we build cities where there's water because there's water there. I can agree to all those things, but it also is true that men are the enforcement arm of basically all law and defense globally for everybody everywhere at all times. How is that ever going to move from a patriarchal system?
The enforcement arm is not that impressive, and it's not really the big differentiator between, like, there were enforcement arms in societies 10,000 years ago when we first planted our first weed things into the ground. So it's not really the big deal of what we're talking about today.
Destiny, do you think that it was more important, that enforcement arm, like say in the 1850s or the 1750s, and it's become less important as technology has advanced? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
How is it less important than it was in the 1700s?
I just want to get his full idea here. And so you think as we go further into the future, we may see a more egalitarian society because technology will take over some of those labor and defense functions that men have?
Because I think increasingly our society is becoming more geared around intelligence. Is basically what society is becoming increasingly geared around. Even the way we fight wars is more and more geared around high IQ people operating drones, operating aircraft, operating whatever. Yeah.
So your argument is, as we get further and further away from a survival scenario, we get more and more the possibility of egalitarianism is possible. My only argument to that is, again, men are still more assertive genetically than women, so I don't necessarily see that being the case.
Sure,
Andrew, you don't agree with that. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it depends on when you say like egalitarian. I don't mean, like I said, even in a perfectly egalitarian society, men and women are probably still going to gravitate towards different jobs.
Exactly. That's exactly my point. And Andrew, your point, do you understand what he's saying is, like, it was probably more important to have those men as enforcement arms and becomes progressively less important as the world.
Like, but I don't agree that that's true. That's the problem.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I don't actually agree that this is true. I think that fundamentally, you still are confined to the rules, right? And the rules are, in the end, not that might makes right, but might does make. Whether you think that it's moral or immoral, it does make. And fundamentally, everything for rights is going to come down to enforcement, and it's always going to come down to men enforcing them, giving them, gifting them, taking them away, this type of thing, regardless of the technology. We've had guns available to women for I don't know how long, okay? Long time, and the shooting industry has gravitated towards trying to train as many of them as possible because it's a huge market that they can pander to, et cetera, et cetera. They're still not very good with them. They're still, to this day, most women still don't know how to fucking use a gun. We're the shit. They really don't. Okay, and this is always going to be the case. Even the mechanism for using the gun, using like Destiny's semi-automatic Glock, right? I bet his wife has trouble cocking the slide. Most people's wives do. Again, this is like hyperbole, Destiny, but I'm just saying all of these things still require some fundamental strength to do. And no, I don't agree that technology is taking away from the fact that the equalization of force is not a possibility.